All right.
So what am I looking at you? Looking here?
It can be both.
Okay.
Yeah, because sometimes some of the things that I've had people talk about, they're like. I'm Kathy with a K, radio broadcaster in Honolulu. Hawaii POV is a talk story series, radio, music, Hawaii. And they're either people that I've met over the years, worked with them in radio, or I've heard them on the radio. This is Richie Aqui. There's two significant moments that I remember meeting Richie Aqui when you did mixtapes, and I worked at a record store.
Right.
And much later on was when I worked at another radio station, another radio group, and we were competing radio stations because it was a top 40 rhythmic format. And he was a music director. We'll start from the beginning, like your origin story, and we'll just pick up along the way. Your origin story here in the islands. Were you born and raised here?
Actually, I was born in Seattle, Washington.
Really?
Yes, and I grew up on the island of Kauai. Kauai has its own style of pidgin, and I don't want to do it right now, but it'll come out. Trust me, it'll come out.
Will I recognize it?
You know what? It's kind of like Frank de Lima. It's pidgin, but with like a drawl. But it doesn't matter if you're Filipino, Japanese, Hawaiian. When you go to Kauai, they all speak the same way. I went to Wilcox Elementary there. There were so many kids named Ata. And I was like, Ata? I went home and told my grandmother, I said, a lot of boys named Ata. And she's like, I think you mean Arthur. I said, oh, is that what it is? It's laid back there, and I had to shake it off real quick when I moved to Oahu because no one spoke like that here. I grew up there. I can remember as far back as maybe like 4 years old, going to preschool there. And then we moved over to Oahu when I was 9. Spent my early childhood years my family's in the cattle business there, and grew up on the farm, and my great-grandfather owned a slaughterhouse.
Wow.
Sorry, I know nowadays there's a lot of vegetarians out there, but that's how we grew up, eggs and, playing in the ditch and catching crayfish and doing things out in the pasture, finding eggs. I mean, you don't do those kind of things anymore.
You sound like you're running for office.
Everybody nowadays is in the phone. My kids at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Playing on the phone, under the table. Put away your phone.
Yeah.
We played in the outdoors.
You moved to Oahu 9, 10 years old.
Yes.
Where'd you land?
I grew up in the boonies, and this is way deep in Kahaluu. Okana Place, to be exact. There's no bus stops there, and I mean...
Well, now it's probably part of the future
now.
rail location.
Back then, there's cows and pigs running around. I mean, I was used to that, right? So,
wow.
But I grew up out there, and but I went to school in town because there was no A+ back then, that after-school program.
Okay.
And not very many schools had that, so I got a district exception to go to Nu'uanu Elementary, and that's where I went to school, and that's where Marcus Mariota went to school too.
Oh, see, running for office.
But I mean, it was a great small school. My first teacher there, Mrs. Kamikawa, I can never forget her, because when you go there from another island, you don't have your friends, and she was very encouraging, and I was so involved in student council and JPO and running for office. There you go, student council. I was student council president, and then later I attended Kamehameha and graduated from there.
How did the mixtape situation happen?
Well, I was one of those bedroom DJs. I'm sure there's a lot of them now with all these programs you can put on your laptop.
Okay, let's back it up a little bit. How did the bedroom DJ take hold of you for you to find money to invest in and to buy it? And
well, actually, it goes back to when I was like 6 years old on Kauai.
Okay.
And my grandmother and my mom, I think they got me like this little tape recorder.
Okay.
It was like a Sesame Street tape recorder with a cassette recorder with a little microphone, and I would record myself impersonating wrestlers. And
who are your wrestlers?
Oh, that was back when there was like superstar Steve Armstrong. Someone said he became Hulk Hogan. I've never researched that. The Missing Link, Ed Francis, Bill Francis. I mean, this is way back in Wrestling Hawaii days. And I would come out dressed as a wrestler and different outfits and do my interviews, and I loved doing that. And I loved playing radio DJ, playing songs and announcing songs and whatnot. So that's where it started. I would spend a lot of time in my bedroom recording, and we used to do these things called pause mixes, where you would just take snippets of songs, let go the pause button, record that snippet, and then just do a different montage. And I would do that and play it for friends, and that started in the 5th grade at Nu'uanu. We had we had a popping group.
Are you a dancer too?
Well, I had a popping group.
Wow.
Back then, and I made the performance music, the montage mixes with that. So that's kind of how that started.
Like dry ice and everything and background?
No, we didn't go that far. I had the checkerboard shoes, the cool comforts we used to wear. You know, they had those Chinese shoes too at one point.
The Kung Fu
slippers,
right,
Kung Fu shoes, and jobbers hats and all that. Members only jackets.
Did your jobbers hat have the flaps or no flaps? It was either painter's
Well, we
cap?
had painter's caps, but then we also had the jobbers with the flaps, but sometimes we'd be cool and tuck it under, and you know. But you had to have the members only jacket.
What colors, or what color did you have?
I had black. I still remember when my mom bought me a jacket. You know, it had everything on it. It looked like members only, but it didn't say members only. I looked at the tag inside. I said, Mom, this is not members only. So she had to take it back. And my grandmother, she's been so supportive, the one from Kauai. She went to Las Vegas to look for that jacket for me and to bring it back so I could have my members only jacket. And I wore it proudly all over school. You know, that was my favorite jacket.
Aww.
I mean, I represented. Once I went into middle school, or intermediate as they called it back then, at Kamehameha, we got into breakdancing.
I need to know the members of your group and everything like that.
Oh, I don't know why I would use it, but I thought it was cool. So I thought Radius was this cool popping name.
Okay.
Which it's a math term, right?
Yeah.
The Radius. But I used that as a name briefly. It didn't last long. And when I went to Kamehameha, practiced back spinning with new friends I had made. I never got totally into the breaking thing after a couple of rug burns on my eye, but I definitely got into the music. So that's where I came in, is my friends are like, hey, you need to get us the mixes and scratch and do all this kind of stuff. I would take my dad, when he wasn't looking, his turntable from the living room, my mom's turntable, she was a hula teacher, her little stereo thing, and I would put it all in my bedroom, and that's where it kind of started.
How did you understand that it took these 2 cassettes, 2 turntables?
I was listening to a radio station called KISA. It was Auntie Loki, Johnny J. Jam, and Rory Wild. That's where I first heard Rory. Johnny J. Jam used to play these songs blended together. He would take Looking for the Perfect Beat by Africa Bambaataa Soul Sonic Force and Rocket by Herbie Hancock, and he would overlay it together, and he would call it Looking for the Rocket Beats. So I would listen to it and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool how he's blending the 2 together. At first, I didn't know how to do it, so I would take like 2 cassette decks. And I went to Radio Shack and bought splitters and split it and just pressed play on both and recorded it with a 3rd recorder from my cousin, and it was just all over the place. Just a train wreck, but I got it blending, and I thought it was so cool because I got it blending. Didn't make sense, but that's how it kind of started. I kept doing montages, and I did one for Michael Jackson, I did one for Prince, and I had it on a cassette tape. And when I was in the 8th grade, I was going up to the swimming pool for PE, and the guy that hands out the Speedos for our swimming class, one of my friends told me, did you know he's a DJ? This Filipino guy, Roman Villanueva, who actually used to work for KISA. So I said, oh, can you make me a mixtape? He said, $5. So I said, okay. So I brought him one of my tapes, but all my tapes had recordings on them from those pause mixes, montage mixes, as you would call it. So I gave that to him. I said, don't worry, just erase it. So the next day I come back to PE class and I'm like, oh, did you make my tape? And he's like, oh, where did you get this? And I said, what? What's on the tape? I said, no, I made it. He said, really? I'll buy it from you. And then he says, don't worry, I'll make you a mix and on another tape. I'll bring it to you the next time. So I said, okay, fine, you can have it. So he brought me a mix, and he was blending different songs together. So I asked him, how did you do that? And he says, oh, you need a mixer. A mixer? Where do you get that from? He's like, Radio Shack. So he said, you know, I'll bring one for you the next time. My old one, you can mess around with it. A week later,
Thank you,
I
Mr.
come home.
Villanueva.
Right, I come home with this mixer he let me borrow. My mom's like, who gave that to you? Do you know who he is?
Stranger danger.
Stranger danger, right. You know, give it back. Yeah, he gave me my first mixer, and then he started letting me borrow records. He said, I want you to do what you did there. And I guess he felt because I could match beats, go mess around with it and control the speed and see what you can do. So I figured it out and I started matching beats. And then I started making mixes for him to play at his gigs.
Wow.
When he would go out and do weddings and school dances. Then I had hookups with all the music. So that's how that started. Then that opened up doors where, you know, okay, now I'm going to upgrade. And fortunately, my grandmother, she supported me on this, and every trip I take to Kauai, I'd come home with something new, come home with another new turntable.
You moved on from members-only jackets to equipment.
Right.
I love it.
And then I got it all working, and then I started making mixtapes for my friends. You know, I'm walking into the lunchroom, and then these seniors, football players, went on, hey, come over here. You know, I go up there, oh, I heard you make mixtapes. So I started getting in. They're like, oh, okay, make me one, make me one. My friends at the lunch table, they would be like, oh, look at Richie with his mixtapes. What, you gonna be on the radio one day? I used to always record the mixes on the radio. 86 maybe.
You mentioned Johnny J. Jam.
This was way back. I was listening to Daniel J.
DJ Daniel
I
J.
think he was the first that broke into the mainstream on, it must have been I94. I remember his sweeper, Daniel J. He kept using it in his mixes, and I would record all those mixes. James Coles, of course, came on after that. And when I first heard James, I'm recording the mixes, and I'm like, I couldn't really tell where the transitions were because it was so seamless and so
I'm getting
smooth.
chicken skin, yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I'm sitting in the car, and my girlfriend at the time is like, oh, let's go to the movies. I'm no, I want to sit in the car. I just want to listen to this guy because it's that good. And I told myself, I need to do what he's doing. I need to make my mixes nice and smooth and clean so you can't even tell. I mean, it took it to an art form at that point, you know. So I found out later from a friend, John Chu, his brother was into the whole music nightclub scene. And he said, oh, my brother gets these records from this one store out in Waikiki called The Beat. And that's where all the DJs go to get all their exclusive DJ remixes and all that. Kevin Okada used to own that store. And I said, really? He said, yeah, they have these cool mixes there. So, of course, I want it, right? So I called Kevin. So, hello, The Beat. I'm like, hey, Kevin, can I buy a mixtape from you? He's like, who's this? I'm like, Richie, like he knows who I am. He's like, I don't know you. Hangs up on me, you know? So I kept visiting him, but over time, I mean, we got to become friends, and, you know, he got me into the record pool.
Explain what a record pool is, because these days people go to Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, and they
all MP3s.
Yeah, everything's digital. There was a period when a record pool, you needed to be invited or added, or
right. So you have to be a member, and you'd pay a small fee. I think it was like $50 a month, but you would get every single new record that got released. You know, 12-inch singles, everything. Things you don't want, you get everything. And basically, you have to report every week. You know, if you played it, you know, rate it 1 to 5, and that's how they would dictate, you know, where the market is moving. I mean, back then, everything was about radio. There was no social media. It was all about record sales, Tower Records, and, you know, I guess that's how the music industry was. So that's how we got all those records. And I still wasn't officially at a nightclub yet, but Kevin was kind enough to let me into the record pool. It was exclusive because
it was, yeah.
You know, you kind of had to earn your right into this record pool. Because I still remember when I first walked into that store,
The Beat.
The Beat, and Kevin sees me, and I'm like, how can I, you know, purchase records? And he's like, well, I can play something for you, but are you going to buy anything? So,
that's, you know, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I said, I think I am. And, you know, I dragged my grandmother from Kauai there.
Oh.
You know, grandma's always with me everywhere. So she went to the record store, and of course she paid for it, right? But, I mean, I went home, I had all this cool music. And one day I went down to Cello. I'm going to, you know, try and turn mine in and see what happens. So they said, you have to see Billy. I dropped off my tape, left my phone number. So I get a call back the next day. I thought he said 15. And I'm stoked about 15. And he said, no, I want, can you drop off 50? So I'm like, oh, okay. All right, no problem. Boom. I thought, okay, now I've arrived somewhat because, you know, these
Brick
people,
and mortar, yeah.
right? They think like, oh wow, what I'm doing is cool. So I kept hanging out with Kevin, and I started doing more mobile gigs, you know, weddings and high school dances. I think I was 18, and I was a flight attendant at the same time for Aloha Airlines.
Okay.
A lot of great people there, and we would have interline parties, and I was too young. You know, I was 18, but I would sneak in because I used to DJ these mobile gigs, and I knew the manager, so I would get into these parties, and I thought it was just so cool for these DJs in nightclubs, that whole scene. I was intrigued by it. One day I'm on my flight doing announcements for Aloha Airlines and, you know, serving POG, and Lanai is on my flight. I mean, this is years ago, like 30 years ago. He was on I94. He did nights with him and Jimmy, the geek. In fact, the two of them were on the plane, and so I met Lanai, and we were talking. So I told him I was, you know, doing DJ work and whatnot. And he said, hey, why don't you come and hang out at the studio one night? Right around 1990. Two local boys, right? The night show. Lanai was doing a program called Love Jams, which was after the prime time and all the hip hop and whatnot, where he played slow jams. And he said, hey, you want to take a request for me and help me with production? Of course, I'm in the radio station. I mean, it's a dream come true, right? I'm in the radio station. This is a time when there's no Facebook and Instagram, and everybody who's anybody is listening to this station. So, I mean, you're hanging out with the cool people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm up there, and I'm just a sponge learning everything I can about going on air and doing production. And Lanai says, hey, I'm going to introduce you to some friends. I'm going to introduce you to a man by the name of Manny Ikban, who runs the DJs over at Rumors.
Oh my God, your heart must have burst out of your chest.
He said, let's go to a, I told my girlfriend, I said, sorry, I can't go out with you. Like, I mean, I needed to be at Rumors, and they had Club I94, which was a live broadcast. So there Lanai was, you know, cracking the mic and
being Lanai.
Club I94, Rumors nightclub, and I'm there, and he gets me a T-shirt, and oh, talk about, I had that Club I94 T-shirt. I wanted to dry clean that thing every time I wore it, because
wonderful. You and your members only jacket.
Right, you know, you wear this shirt so proudly around town, and like people are like, oh,
how'd you get that?
You know, how'd you get that, right? So finally, I turned in a demo tape to Manny. He hired me there, and I started working there with Kevin Nakasone. He used to be DJ Dream, and he was the main DJ there, head DJ there. Most times I was on the mic, running the lights. You know, it was only $8 an hour at the time, but it was a dream come true. The fact that you worked till 4 in the morning didn't even, you know, faze me at all, because, you know, hey, I'm here, you know, this is where I wanted to be. And such great memories. And then, of course, from there, opened doors for other places. One day, I get a call from a friend of mine who knew the GM over at Maharaja. And he said, hey, they're looking for DJs.
At the time, Rumors nightclub was, what kind of crowd were they catering versus Maharaja?
Okay, so people now remember Rumors as the older crowd.
And older just being 45 plus.
Right,
kind of thing,
but back then, it was like the place. I mean, you had college night there. You had, you know, it was the hot spot. So you're talking, you know, unless it was college night, it's 21, 22, 23, maybe caps out at 35. Maharaja.
That came in the mid-1990s?
Right, but it took the whole clubbing scene to another level, because you had like a totally different type of sound system. The Japanese owned it, and the lights were amazing. It was high class. In Hawaii at the time, this was the Vegas club, and it was such a cool place to be. And I said, sure, I want to audition, you know. And at that time, I think James was starting to leave to get more involved in radio and his own nightclub. So it was perfect timing. So I got to work with him for a little bit, and then eventually he had left, and that opened up more nights for me. So I was working there along with, I don't know if you remember Rich Wong. He came over from Bobby McGee's, which is another great spot, and we worked together there for many years. Eventually when he left, I became the head DJ there. My whole life at the time was all about planning for the weekend. making sure I had the right records. I wanted something new, even if I spent all my money on the latest and greatest, because when I went to work, I mean, I wanted to take everyone on a journey. From 10 o'clock, I knew what I was going to play at 1:45 and peak out at this time, and just to match with the lights and everything. It was just, I wanted to give people an experience when they came to the club, you know, and I just took so much pride in. I would practice like a professional athlete practices for their sport. I would spend the week practicing where I would mix the songs so that when they heard it blending together, it would just build this buzz in the air. I put so much time and effort. I took so much pride in that. It was just everything at the time. I'm only 24. Of course, I left room in there because people always come up and ask for songs, right? I tended to kind of go with what I wanted in my program because, you know, I knew where I was going to go, and eventually I would play their song anyway.
Yeah.
And it was about drink sales, too, for the club, so I had to make sure I rotated the dance floor. And, you know, I used to work in things that people would never imagine I would work in there, just to even chase people off the dance floor, you know, make sure they go ahead and get something to drink.
Keep hydrated, kids.
Exactly. But I looked forward to every Friday and Saturday, you know. Tuesday night, no, that's okay. Someone else can work Tuesday night. Great times, you know. One night, James came in and...
To Maharaja.
Right. He was like, hey, you want to do mix shows on I94? So, of course, members only jacket moment. I94 t-shirt, record pulled. I said, of course, you know, I'll do that. I'd love to do it. The first original hit mixers on I94 were James, Cooley, myself, and a guy from Maui, DJ C. So that was the first 4 hit mixers, as they called it, for I94. I think it was the 9 o'clock hit mix, and we did the 5 o'clock traffic jam or flashback mix with Scotty B. Scotty B was doing afternoons there. That's kind of where the on-air side began. You know, it's just doing a lot of mix shows constantly for I94, and all this is all happening at the same time. My relationship with Kevin grew, and finally, Hawaii started to become recognized as a place that moves music.
And broke music.
Right.
Yeah.
So Billboard, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but at the time they needed Billboard reporting DJs, Billboard reporters they called it. So one day Kevin says, hey, you know what, you're working in Maharaja, you're doing the mixes on the radio. How would you like to be the first Billboard DJ from Hawaii?
I'm going to start crying.
So I'm like, such an honor because...
You're working toward unknowingly, just because of the love of the music.
It opened us up to a whole different style of music too, because on the mainland it was very progressive. They were so deep into house and club anthems.
So that sounds like 1994.
Getting to the mid-90s, right. And Hawaii is so behind. We're still in, you know, Blackstreet, Dr. Dre. The clubs don't play house music at all, unless you're in the underground
scene. We love house
scene.
music.
It's not selling drinks.
Yeah.
So when I would go to Chicago and all over for these conventions, it was just a whole nother scene there.
This is really fascinating because, like, there's radio music, and then there's club music, and then there's mixtapes that may not be featured in clubs or on the radio.
Right. Even a song like Crystal Waters' 100% Pure Love.
Yeah.
That was a club song, but they started to play it on the radio. But when I first brought that song out here, I remember playing it at Maharaja, and I cleared my dance floor because it had that breakdown where there's no beats going. And of course, people in Hawaii, you know, they're used to the beat. All of a sudden, beat stops. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand around and listen to Crystal Waters sing, it's 12 past midnight. Hey, you don't have to leave the dance floor. But I would go to the mainland and come back with all these cool records and figure out, oh, I can't just throw these at, you know, it's like throwing seeds at the pigeons, you know, they scatter. People weren't ready for it. So we would have to disguise it in between songs that they knew, maybe Robin S., Show Me Love, things like that. People in Hawaii, they really like their urban hip hop. 10 years ago, as I capped off my, I guess, club career, as you want to call it, working in that scene, a lot of times the DJs were playing all house music. Eventually, it took over, you know, that whole rave scene and whatnot. But at that time, when we first brought it out here, they weren't ready.
Was it frustrating that you might have been out of sync just because it was too new?
I guess that's why we live out here in the middle of the Pacific, right?
Chill,
we're always
whatever. We like that time zone.
It's laid back, and I was just laid back. Snoop Dogg, gin and juice. I was, again, I'm in this club scene. James Coles was the music director for I94, and I was doing mixed shows. Eventually, I had left. Jamie Hyatt moved back to Hawaii, and he went over to KQMQ, and I met him at a club event, and we clicked, and I went over to do mixed shows for him. So next thing you know, 93.1 is doing mixed shows, which was really against what they were all about at that time, and it became a cool station. I worked with Jamie.
I like how you're air quoting. He's so loyal to I94. I love it.
So we did Planet Q.
Oh, yeah.
And Jamie, eventually, he promoted me to music director. Then I started to talk not only to the club promoting reps from record labels, but now the radio, the mainstream reps. So here I was covering both sides, going to all these events, and people don't understand. Back then there was no social media, so unless there's airplay, people don't know about your music. And
the closest thing would be MTV and VH1.
Right.
It was music video driven way of getting things out.
So I just got to meet a lot of people, and in the entertainment business, and celebrities, and just having a grand old time back then. Fast forward, James calls me one day. He's like, "How would you like me to make your dreams come true?" That's how it started. I'm like, "Okay, let's get together." So I met up with him, and he told me, I'm actually going to leave I94, and I'm going to go focus on my nightclub called The Mix. And he said, "How would you like to be the music director for the #1 CHR station?
Contemporary hit radio."
And Alan wants you on board, I really didn't want to leave Jamie, because Jamie is just an awesome guy, and we really got along. At the time, I felt this is a good opportunity for me. I still remember walking on over to I-94. I didn't even have a car, I think, back then. I was cabbing it everywhere.
Oh, baller.
I lived right across from KQMQ, so it was convenient.
Yeah.
So then, we kind of put it all together. Alan allowed me to do an overnight mix show that focused on dance music, and I called it The Beat, sponsored by The Beat, Kevin, and I showcased dance music and other DJs who wanted to, show off their dance music mixes, even from the mainland. And that was the peak of my career as far as, radio meets nightclubs, and, that was just my whole life at the time. I wasn't even at the airlines anymore. Just everything was all about music, radio, nightclubs. Then I got real serious into the radio side. Eventually, doing a lot of promotions. Party called the Playhouse we did over at World Cafe. You would never think that many kids would come out on a Sunday night, because it was 18 and over. So it was a great party. So I started getting really involved in the nightlife, using the radio as my tool, right? Because I had it right there. Eventually did concerts, big outdoor parties with G-Spot. The first rave called Children of the Corn out at Aloon Farms.
I was going to say, that
the
sounds
first and
like
last.
Yeah.
Because I think it destroyed the maze, but it was a great event. I eventually left I-94, went back to Jamie Hyatt over at what was going to be Extreme Radio. Then I got into my own nightclub and club ownership, and sort of walked away from being the DJ at that point. I think I was 28
Oh my gosh.
at that time, and I was like, I did not want to DJ forever. I was worried
How dare you?
No, I mean, not like in this case. Rewind that. No, because at that time, I should have maybe stayed in it, because look at all these DJs now making 150,000 spinning. But at that time, this didn't exist, So I thought, okay, this is only going to go so far. I better quit while I'm ahead. I still remember James. I keep referring to James, but he was always there around me, influencing me, a mentor. We used to go hiking together.
Oh, that's
All right, we need to lose weight now. Too many late nights at Zippy's after the club, you know, like like. I said, James, you know, I think I'm gonna walk away from DJ. He's like, are you kidding me? I said, I don't want to be a DJ when I'm 50. And he's like, he looks at me, and he looks at me. He's like, I pray I'm DJing at 50. He said, the party continues, you know, but I was like, I don't know if I could do that, you know.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed, you know, for a family and whatnot. It's just, it wasn't going to be the best environment. But, you know, here I was in the environment, you know. When do I say when? I'm not DJing, but I'm still in the environment, you know.
Right.
But sometimes, you know, as a DJ, you get caught up in the party, and everybody wants to be around you, and you're the guy that they all come to see, and they want to buy you drink. Someone once told me the worst thing he ever did was buy a nightclub. You know, why buy the cow when you were getting the milk for free?
Right.
And you know what? He was absolutely right. And this is from another guy who used to own a nightclub. It was Ronnie Urong, BBC New Generation. Okay. He owns a roofing company now. He gave me that quote, why buy the cow and get the milk for free? Later on when he was working for a roofing company, he ended up buying a roofing company or starting one. I said, Ronnie, what happened to why buy the cow and you get the milk for free? And he's like, not if it's a cash cow.
He's smart.
So many great memories. I helped consult other nightclubs after that, helped them to get, you know, liquor licenses, more administrative. It was taking its toll. Coming home at 7:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
On the weekends only last for so long, and sleeping all day. You know, when you're single, who cares? You can sleep until 2 o'clock and start all over again. But
married, how many kids?
I have 3 boys. My wife is a private banker, mortgage banking. So she has the real job. I get benefits from her. My oldest is 19.
Gee whiz.
My middle one is 16.
Gee whiz.
And my youngest is 7.
Gee whiz.
All boys, my 3 sons.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. The radio stuff, they hear about it from people when we run into people. And that's one of the greatest things that James Coles taught me. Because at the time when I was going to be a hit mixer, I said, okay, so what am I going to be known as? Just use Richie Aqui. I think it's cool. I was like, really?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, just use your name. I'm like, okay, whatever you say. He's like, all right, because I already ordered the sweepers. Till this day, when I see people, they start talking to me. I have my own solar company now, and I'll talk to people, and they're like, hey, didn't you do, you know, weren't you on the radio and whatnot? It's those memories that people have of I94, Maharaja. I mean, we make such a connection.
When your mixtapes back in the years of Jellies,
Right.
a lot of the different tapes had artwork.
I can't even remember everyone. I do remember Brian Mizota, DJ Evil. You know, it was him primarily. As things went on into CDs, I had other people. But Brian did a lot of my covers for me. Devin Lai. I think he was doing cartooning for the Kaleo paper, and I think he got hired at Disney. I had another DJ working for me who did artwork for me, DJ Free, John Isabello, a friend Mark Ching, who designed a lot of radio stations' logos, but he did a lot of artwork for me. And even he did movie set design for Marvel too, so a lot of talent here in Hawaii that we were tapping into before they were doing it for the big studios. I was just going through my pictures the other day, you know, from Aaliyah. I had so many cool autographed pictures, Madonna, you name it, you know.
Who were you listening to on the radio when you were, I guess before you were working in radio, like who were some of the DJs? And then the other part is, before you became a DJ in your own right at the clubs, where did you go because you heard that the so-and-so was spinning?
I grew up here listening to Ron Wiley. I think I was on my way to 4th grade, Michael Cusang, and eventually Rory Wilde, who's still here.
Yeah.
That's how long he's been doing radio.
Yeah, he's aging backwards, so you know, I don't know.
But Lanai, Jimmy, Scotty B, gosh, so many. You know, when I was younger, I had no idea. Like, I thought you could request any song.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the
You
day,
still can.
oh yeah,
No.
you still can. Yeah, sorry. I would sit there at my recorder and I would request all these popping, breakdancing songs, which mainstream radio would not play. And I would sit there the whole day
Me too.
with my cassette waiting for it. Okay, maybe the next, and I would call back. Hey, are you gonna play my song? Yeah, we're gonna play it. But I would sit there and wait. Radio was so cool, and I remember going to see Spaz, Cutmaster Spaz. I even auditioned there at Silly's. I never got called back though, and I know why. I was never that trickster doing the scratching and the cutting it up and all that. That wasn't really my art. I did it not in a major league, so to say, but so that was more what Silly's was all about. Spaz was really good at that. But I would go and see him. Rumors, Joho, Lance Aoyagi. I think it goes back to James, because I used to go to Maharaja just to watch James.
James Coles, huh?
Yeah. Like some people will watch their favorite athlete and just watch Tiger Woods all day, play golf. I could go there and just watch James do his mixes. Cool, just to watch him work,
He makes it really effortless.
Right. Like, see, I was practicing
Yeah.
to be close to perfection.
Yeah.
James was just doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just pull this record out and just drop it right in. And, I used to touch the record when I'm adjusting the pitch. And he told me, no, you don't want to be touching the record. You just grab the pitch control and you do this until you get it right in the middle. And it was just like flowing like this, and his head is moving. And it was an art form.
Yeah.
I learned a lot just by watching and wanting to be like him. When a guy like him, who you've admired, comes up to you one day, he didn't really know you're a DJ.
Or you didn't know he knew that you were
Right.
a DJ.
Just some kid coming around hanging out. But later on, when he asks you to replace him when he leaves, it didn't get much better than that at that time, So when I see him to this day, I always, even Lanai, because Lanai had a lot to do with getting me out there, and those days and those times brought me a lot of connections and business contacts, and really helps me now in my business and just where I'm going. So it's been a blessing.